Welcome back to this exploration of the 19th century isms. Now, I told you that the 19th century is going to be dominated by liberalism and nationalism, but there's a lot other ideas going on. And one of the most dominant is socialism, this new concept of socialism and the offspin that we refer to as communism. Now, first and foremost, we have to understand these are two different terms. Communism is socialism, but socialism is not necessarily communism. So before we go any further, we have to understand that the concept of socialism is that everybody owns things equally, that there is no private property, that I own your pen and you actually own my watch, but so does everybody else, and frankly, I own your underwear and you own my socks. It's all communal property, which means everybody pulls together and works on things communally. Some people in the socialist theoretical community believe that this is simply not functional. And those people developed a alternative concept that we refer to as communism. And they refer to it as a way of making socialism work. And the concept is very simple. Instead of everybody being on an equal plane and we all share everything, let's take all private property and therefore all decisions away from individuals and make them in control of the government. So in communism, everything is owned by the government. And the government owns all property and holds it for everybody and distributes it equally. So again, communism is a form of socialism, but there are many socialisms that are not communism. Alright. So, and please understand, what we need to look at are the socialist reactions here. Because in the 19th century, this was the age of the Industrial Revolution. This is the age of massive industrialism, as well as these new liberal ideas that support free market industrialization. And we can see this spread rapidly across Europe. But there were some people who were uncomfortable with this, and they started asking themselves the social question, which is, can we leave people behind? Because Adam Smith said, if for some to achieve their goals and seek out their own self-worth, others will have to suffer. And eventually, everybody would be brought to a better place. But some people said, do people have to suffer? Do kids need to work in factories? Do people have to die young because they are losing an arm in these machines, or they are suffocating in coal mines, or they are simply starving to death because the employers, the bourgeois, don't pay a livable wage? They started looking at this intense, increasing group of desperate, starving poor, and asking, does it have to be this way? Do these proletariat or working class people, should they be treated in this manner? So these are reactions to industrialization. And the first one we want to look at are these guys. They are typically in England called the Luddites. These are machine breakers. These are actually skilled artisans, we think. It's a group of people, either organized or very sporadic, again, we're not really sure, who began breaking machines. They began breaking into factories, destroying machines, taking out their anger, that they're losing their jobs, maybe just trying to turn back the tide. But it was a wave of something that happened in the 1820s and 30s. There was a similar movement in the Netherlands called the Sabbat movement. They would take these wooden shoes that you think of when you think of Dutch, called sabbats, and they would throw them into the machine. They would therefore get locked into the gears. The machine would break, hence sabotage. This is where we get the term. But a lot of people were not as extreme as this. And probably the one big movement that's really started to dominate the time, we need to think of as the social novel. It was middle-class people who began looking at the plight of the worker or the proletariat and asking, what can we do? And many people, like Charles Dickens, like Victor Hugo, started writing these novels about how hard these people's life were, or these people's life was. And in doing so, they had one concept, other than to make money in publishing. If you show these upper middle class, these bourgeois, these wealthier, what is going on, if they can actually see into the life of the proletariat and how hard their life is, then maybe they will make a change. Maybe they will make something happen. And that was the goal, to alert the middle class of the problems and the poverty and the filth that exists. And maybe once they know, they'll do something. Now, there are other people, like Charles Fourier, who will feel that the problem was too far gone. They need to reject industrialization together. They hearken back to this rural ideal community of the please understand, this is the Romantic age of Romanticism. And they thought we need to create communities of pure socialism. Now, Karl Marx will call these people utopian socialists because he thought they were unrealistic. But the idea was we need to create communes, which are settlements like this one of communities who live together, who all share in each other's property, who all pitch in and do the work, who live as a cooperative community helping each other. Yes, this is what they were trying to pull back in the 1960s with these hippie communes. It was the same concept. But you have to realize most of these people were upper middle class people who could donate money to this and try to create this. Charles Fourier himself thought we could do this, but it has to be planned. We need 800, and he thought there were 810 personality types. And if you can get a male and female of each personality types, giving you 1,620 people, all these 1,620 people will work perfectly together, and you will have a place in complete harmony. This is actually a picture of the schematic of Robert Owen's attempt to create New Harmony, Pennsylvania. He will actually create the community, and it will survive for quite a while. But most of these did not. Most of these did not last, right? Greed or dispute simply broke these communities apart, but there were several attempts to do so. And the idea was simple. If you create a perfect community and the rest of the world sees it, maybe they can recreate that on a larger scale. That was the attempt of creating a socialist system. But of course, this is the man most people think of when they think of socialism, or at least communism. He is Karl Marx, and he simply believed that those utopian socialists and their idea for a perfect society would never work. So along with Frederick Engels, one of the leading socialists of the age, he wrote something called the Communist Manifesto, in which he laid out his ideas on how communism is inevitable. How the world has been a series of struggles, and classes always fight. And eventually, classes will rise up, and we've seen across time that some classes will rise up and throw off their power of their overlords, and he sees it happening in things like the French Revolution or the English Civil War. And he thinks that at some point, those proletarians, those bottom workers will rise up, and they will overthrow everybody, and once they do that, we will have a perfect classless society. And there will be no more poverty, and there will be no starvation, there will be no shortage of houses. And it will happen, but it will have to happen through armed conflict. And so he calls for it. The last line of the Communist Manifesto reads, "Workers of the world, unite." He calls to rise up and overthrow the bourgeoisie and create a perfect communist system. You can imagine the influence this is going to have among people who are working and struggling, and in some case starving, this idea that you can be on an equal setting if you just have the will to do so. We'll take a look at what happens in Russia.